Happy Friday and welcome to the Golden Days. I wonder what we're going to be talking about today. Let's see here as I try and make this a little more symmetrical. Guess what? We're going to be talking about Jonathan Kuminga.
Again?
Yeah. Jonathan Kuminga.
Again?
Yeah, again. Because what else is there to talk about? Is this the most frustrating offseason in Warriors history? Is that too bold of a statement? Let's talk about it. I'll bring the audience in too if you want to join me. Going to be a short and sweet episode. The Golden Day Studios don't have air conditioning. And it's a damn hot day today. But if you want to join me, the invite is open. You can talk about whatever you want. Happy Friday again. It's the Golden Days.
They always find something to nitpick, and that's because there's expectations for us to win. Leave me alone this summer.
Let's go.
In a minute, I'ma need a sentimental man or woman to pump me up.
Yeah, this is getting lame. Lame sauce. Yeah, lame. That's what this offseason has been. Just lame. Wrong on so many levels. What is going on with my angle today? I can't get this right. Everything that's on this show, I think, symbolizes the frustration of Dub Nation. Welcome, everybody, to the program. My name is Cyrus Saatsaz. I will be your host for a short and hopefully sweet episode. The link is in the chat now. If any audience members wants to join me, I recommend getting in sooner than later because, again, this is going to be an abbreviated program most likely. I feel like every time I say that, we end up going an hour plus. But I want to give the people what they want. We stop recording when we're exhausted with good topics and conversation, and that is usually the formula that we follow here. Before we get into the talking points in terms of what we have to discuss today, because there is some new information. I would not be coming on the show just to say, hi, it's me. Click, 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 please, so I can make money. Side note, this Warriors offseason, I'm not exaggerating, has cost myself, and I'm guessing a lot of other people who make Warriors content, thousands of dollars because there's nothing to talk about. That's what we do. We talk Warriors. What the hell has there been to talk about for nearly 2 months now? Oh, yeah, we could talk about Jonathan Kuminga.
Again?
Jesus Christ. Let's give some love first to our sponsor, plural. And first up on the agenda is Decades. They put a smile on my face. I'm eternally grateful, lucky, fortunate to have them as a sponsor for the simple reason that I get to promote a sponsor that brings good into this world. They actually are producing live music for audiences. You can literally hire this awesome band. This is what they do for a living. They are literally full-time musicians. Do you realize how talented you have to be to pull that off? Yet that is what Decades does. Go to decadesofficial.com again, decadesofficial.com. You can also follow them on Facebook and Instagram at decadesofficial to see what they've been up to. They've been traversing the country, playing live music for, I've seen fairs, county fairs with audiences of in the tens of thousands watching this band. They can also play your event, whether it's a personal event like a wedding, like an anniversary, a birthday, maybe it's just a good old-fashioned backyard rager. And if you do that, invite me, please. I will be there. Or you could email Kyle, and if you want to book them, email Kyle at atomicmusicgroup.com. Kyle at atomicmusicgroup.com is how to track these folks down and hire them for your event. Maybe it's a private corporate event. Think of the Catalina wine mixer. You need some prestige worldwide, pumping fantastic music from the 50s to today. They're not just playing Billy Joel hits, folks. They're playing everything. And not just from the 80s, from the 50s to today. They even played Niner pregame parties. They call those red zone rallies next door to Levi Stadium in Great America. And they could be there for you. Decadesofficial.com is the website. Again, decadesofficial.com is the website. Book them. Thank me later. They are phenomenal and awesome. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel, the official sports book of Golden Days and the Believe Network. We are elated to have them on board with us. Emphatically excited. FanDuel, brother, look at that. And sisters, everyone out there involved. And we're going to have a lot of fun with them once the season starts. And we're going to have a lot of lines to explore. FanDuel has far more options than any other sports book out there. They're fantastic. Go check them out. And we're also going to have a new overlay for this show soon. We're doing a little redesign, thanks a large part to FanDuel. It's going to look something like this, but we're going to fancy it up quite a bit more than what we have here. But yeah, FanDuel, check them out and win some money if you're in a place where it's actually legal. But for today, in terms of legal and what the Golden State Warriors can do, not a lot when it comes to the Jonathan Kuminga situation. Yes, we are talking about Jonathan Kuminga.
Again?
Again. Because it's like Groundhog's Day. I'm here to report. There's a couple pieces of new information I want to quickly drop for this, again, very short episode. One is, and I think this is a symbol, a sign, that a hint of desperation is starting to hit the Golden State Warriors. And what I mean by that is, according to Jake Fisher of Yahoo, who writes as part of Mark Stein's Substack, and again, he's sourced. He was reporting for Yahoo Sports for a long time. Who knows what happened there, if it was a cost-cutting measure or whatnot, but Jake Fisher is now with Mark Stein, and when he reports something, people usually take it to a certain degree as fact. And what he reported, and there's some chats. I'm sorry for the late start, by the way. I'll get to those in just a second. The Warriors have officially now expressed interest in Josh Giddey of the Chicago Bulls. And who knows if this was a traditional offseason, if something like that would even be reported. Who knows how serious it is or how lighthearted it is. But the fact that the Warriors are now at least dipping their toes into those waters is a strong sign that they're the one who is starting to bend a little bit here in terms of this back and forth, this standoff, this holdout, whatever you want to call this situation. They can't let this thing go forever, because right now they have 9 spaces filled on their roster. They have to get to 14, or at a bare minimum 13. You could start the season with 13 if they have to. And I think that the NBA allows, I don't have that rule memorized, it's something like, it might be almost like a month of the season where you're allowed to dip below 14. And I think there's like time limits on that. I think you can do it for like 2 weeks at a time or whatever. Point is, that information matters a little bit, because if this thing drags out into October and the Warriors start getting desperate, you might see it get to 13 in terms of the roster's spaces being filled up. But the Warriors don't have leverage in the sense that they can't wait forever. They're going to have to fill these roster spaces. And the moment they start filling these roster spaces, that's when the vultures are going to start circling, because the moment the Warriors blink first, and the Warriors blinking first, what that means literally is them signing another player. That suddenly makes it impossible for them to match a max offer sheet that another team may offer for Jonathan Kuminga. That's the holdup here. What the Warriors don't want to happen is putting themselves in a position where another team can basically Gilbert Arenas them, can offer Kuminga more than the Golden State Warriors can match, right? And again, the most money Jonathan Kuminga can make next year, hypothetically, is $36 million and change. And the Warriors right now are in this precarious position where they at least can't use their mid-level exception and simultaneously hope to keep Jonathan Kuminga. I think the worst case scenario here is if Kuminga really forces their hand and the Warriors are doubling down saying, we're not letting you go, I don't care what the situation is, then what will likely happen is the Warriors will simply not use the taxpayer mid-level exception, which again is good for about $5.6 million. Because if you don't use that, you're not going to hard cap yourself. You do put yourself at risk of getting into the second apron. If, let's say, you use strictly veteran minimum deals to sign, let's say, like Seth Curry, DeAnthony Melton, you find an alternative to Al Horford, because it seems like that taxpayer mid-level exception is primarily for Horford. So you could get away with just using veteran minimums and then just having Jonathan Kuminga just sit there in purgatory, if you will. But I also don't think the Warriors want to do that in what could be Stephen Curry's final season of having a real legitimate shot at a championship. And so this is the position that both sides find themselves in. Shardall, what is up, my friend? Alan Day in the chat writing that teams and Kuminga are simply waiting on the Warriors to use that mid-level exception. Exactly. And this is why the Warriors just might not use it. And again, if it comes to that, now the Warriors are making decisions that hurt Stephen Curry's shot at winning another championship next year. And then that makes you wonder, where the hell are their priorities at this point? So the Josh Giddey piece of this, and side note, in case any of you think that Jake Fisher is the one breaking the news that the Warriors once upon a time wanted Josh Giddey, we've been reporting on this program for years now as a fact that going back to the 2021 draft, if Josh Giddey had slid to number 7 as expected, the Golden State Warriors would have drafted him. And that was entirely Steve Kerr's wish. Josh Giddey is a Steve Kerr guy. Steve Kerr loves him, or at least did. And there are complications with trying to get Josh Giddey. Numerous complications. First and foremost, the Bulls, who are a very difficult partner in any scenario involving a transaction, involving free agency. They're frugal. They're cheap. They have an awful owner who's still milking the Michael Jordan years. Yeah, we're in 2025. Those were the 90s. Their owner, Jerry Reinsdorf, still just milking at the teat of Michael Jordan. So they're not an easy partner to deal with. They reportedly love Josh Giddey themselves and don't want to give him up. Josh Giddey's like Jonathan Kuminga, though, in the sense that Giddey was the 6th pick in the 2021 draft. Kuminga's the 7th pick in the 2021 draft. They both want to get paid. In a lot of ways, I feel like Kuminga has a far better case than Giddey because Kuminga hasn't had opportunities. Josh Giddey, you have a pretty good idea what you're getting with him. And side note, me personally, I'm not a Josh Giddey fan. I don't like his shot, plain and simple. I don't think he's a consistent outside shooter. So if you're making a move for Josh Giddey, you're making a move for a guy who's basically a point guard without a three-point shot, but he has size, and that size can make up for a lot of the deficiencies with his shot. That's what you're getting. I personally don't think Giddey is anywhere near Kuminga's level when it comes to talent, but I'm also, like a lot of you, so frustrated and tired with this situation that if I learned tomorrow that the Warriors did a sign and trade where it was like, let's say hypothetically, a straight up swap, and side note, that can't happen, and I'll explain why in a second, but let's say for the sake of argument, Kuminga and Josh Giddey are just swapped. At least this shit is over, and we could move on and just talk hoops instead of contracts and CBA and all this bullshit that were relegated to in terms of topics of discussion this offseason. And they call me crazy, adding in the chat that Josh Giddey is also not a good defender. Look, I'm not a Giddey fan, so do not mistake me for a second with someone who is advocating for Josh Giddey on the Warriors. With that said, a resolution has to come here at some point. This is exhausting what's going on. Here's another problem. The real Eleasy, what is up? Good to see you. Happy Friday. Another problem with the Giddey thing, and then I'll get back to some of the chat questions from the very beginning of the show. Josh Giddey, like Jonathan Kuminga, is going to be in a situation with the CBA where in a sign and trade, you can only get back 50% of what you send out. And I think there's some caveat besides that of certain $1 million. This is all bullshit. It doesn't matter in reality. The point is the Bulls would have to deal with a similar sign and trade rule. Good news in that front, the Bulls, who have never side note paid a penny in luxury tax penalties because, again, Jerry Reinsdorf is the worst owner and he cares more about saving money than he does about the fans of Chicago and winning. Good news is that the Chicago Bulls can afford to get hard capped. So they could get the money back in terms of Kuminga, whatever he makes. The Warriors could not. The Warriors, if they want to be serious about next year and if they want to fill out their roster to 14, cannot get hard cap at the first apron, which is approximately $197 million. $195 million. And that's what would happen if this situation happened. Meaning, if you traded Kuminga to the Bulls in a sign-and trade, and you got back Josh Giddey in a sign-and trade, Giddey wants $30 million. Let's say he settles for 20. That means the Bulls would have to either offer Kuminga a max deal, and then you'd still have to add someone else to make the Giddey amount 50% of the total back and forth. It's a mess. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's for good reason, because this shit is unnecessarily complicated. And like most things in life, it's done so intentionally so that the people who hold that information have more power. Welcome to the reality of information is power, right? And yes, a lot of people in this world, whether on the business side, whether on the academic side, they make things far more complicated than they need to be so that you don't understand what they're talking about. It's exhausting to try to understand what they're talking about. Thus, they control the message. They control the information as a result of that. And a complicated CBA, as we're all now learning, was too much for the NBA Players Association to figure out, and their players got screwed this year. The restricted free agents are getting screwed this year. Traveling Urquidez was first. What's up? So the point is, if Josh Giddey was actually on the Warriors' radar, and I'm not saying he's not, but to facilitate that trade would be borderline impossible because of the whole 50% rule, because of the fact that Kuminga does hold a lot more value than Giddey, but it's nearly impossible to get back a proper haul because you can't add even more salaries because, again, you can't bring back more than 50% of Kuminga's value. Otherwise, you are hard capped at the first apron, $195 million. The Warriors don't want to find themselves in that situation. They're currently at 170. That does not include whatever Kuminga could make. That does not include whatever you're thinking of paying to, let's say, DeAnthony Melton, Seth Curry, Al Horford. And that leads to another player I want to talk about real fast, and that's GP2. There's been mixed reporting about GP2. And actually, before I proceed with that, let me real quickly get to these early chat comments. Phil Alper in the chat was saying, let's just get this goddamn deal done now so that I'm not talking, and we're not talking, about Jonathan Kuminga.
Again?
Yeah, again. DVDV saying, wasn't this supposed to have started already? Yeah, sorry. We lagged. I lagged. I'm doing the show solo. My apologies for that. AC in the chat is saying, just guarantee the second year. This is referencing Jonathan Kuminga's contract situation. It's not going to hurt his trade value. 1-year deal is ridiculous. I'm actually really glad you brought that up. In case you're not following what AC is saying here, if reports are true, and this is courtesy of Anthony Slater, who, as long as you're not relying on his information from a year ago pertaining to what Jonathan Kuminga and his representation reportedly turned down from the Warriors, $30 million, as long as you can pretend that never happened, we're going to trust Anthony Slater all the time. Side note, I'm going to trust Slater despite that. Just what a shit show this whole thing has been. So Slater reported that the Golden State Warriors have a 2-year, $45 million offer on the table for Jonathan Kuminga. The caveat to that is if that offer is real and Kuminga signs it, the CBA gives him a no trade clause. the Warriors, A, don't want him to have that. And B, they want to make the second year of that deal a team option, which is essentially, in more clear words, if we're being very honest here, if we're being genuine here, what the Warriors are basically doing, and it's why I'm accusing them of negotiating in bad faith, and it's why I'm accusing them of lowballing Kuminga. They're basically telling JK, will you just take the 1 year, $20 million deal and then get the hell out of here after this season if you're still unhappy and Kerr's still around and, you know, the things feel similar a year from now. They're basically asking a hell of a lot from Jonathan Kuminga. And you can point a finger at JK in terms of pride and whether or not he should swallow that for another season or if he should stand on his ground based on principle. And this is the back and forth, right? I don't know if there is an honestly correct answer in all this, but I can see Kuminga's perspective a hell of a lot more than the Warriors at this point. And that's where they find themselves. And who knows why the Warriors want to have that flexibility. If the dream is LeBron James a year from now, that's ridiculous. LeBron turns 42, Steph turns 39, Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green turn 37. That is a geriatric lineup well past his prime. Might be entertaining for a part of the season, but that is old, man. Like, old man basketball does not win championships. It doesn't happen, all right? 35, it's never gone beyond 35, okay? And if it does happen, I feel like Steph's the only person that can pull it off. And if it's not this year, I don't know if it's ever going to happen. But, and again, that's just all my opinion at that point. But this is what the Warriors are doing in terms of the contract negotiations. And it's crazy. And Kuminga side's like, what? A team option for year two? You want us to waive the no trade clause? Are you out of your effing minds? Would you like a rim job with that? I mean, come on. What are we doing here? PMG in the chat saying, did Ty Jerome get more money than Kuminga? At the moment, yes. Well, I don't know if that's going to be the end result, but let me see if there's anything else in the chat that I missed. Phil Alper's asking, what do you think is going to happen with the Jonathan Kuminga situation? And yes, we're talking about Jonathan Kuminga.
Again?
Yeah, again. A handle that's called Cy Cockgobbler is saying, I have a lot of experience with rim jobs, giving them, but don't shh. And on that note, again, you could have dissenting opinions. You could even come on the show and try a troll job. But come on. And Real Elise is asking, why can't he have a player option? It's because, again, the Warriors want flexibility next year. What do they know that we don't know? I don't know. I hope it's not LeBron that they're looking at. If it's Giannis, okay, all right, now we're talking. Shams did report recently that situation is not settled. Who knows? But, and look, side note, you can have Kuminga and Giannis in theory. Why not aim for that? This thing is a mess. Now, going back to the GP2 thing, and the reason why his name is coming up is because there have been mixed reports in terms of the Warriors' interest in him. He has been around the Bay Area. He's been spotted at Valkyries games. His dad lives in the Bay, so so GP2 has a lot of roots here. But Sam Amick of The Athletic was on a radio show in Sacramento over the weekend. And the Kings and their base have the Warriors all up in their minds because of this Kuminga situation and the fact that the Kings half-heartedly want Jonathan Kuminga. If they were serious about it, make a serious trade offer instead of these bullshit, one-sided deals that Lacob's never going to agree to. So, anyways, the name GP2 came up. And I've expressed this opinion before, and I'll say it again, despite how unpopular it is. I feel like every time I talk about GP2, I lose followers. People get pissed at me. I get it. He's a very popular individual. He played a huge role in 2021. I wish you folks paid attention to nuance. And what I mean by that is in 2021, 2022, after the Warriors won the championship, if anybody was advocating for GP2 to get paid, it was this guy with two thumbs pointed his way. Times change. If you want to do this right in terms of covering basketball, covering sports, covering anything in the media game, you have to adapt your views. You have to understand that, especially in athletics, bodies break down. They're human beings. They evolve themselves. What GP2 was in 2022 ain't what he is in 2025. And adding to the nuance of the GP2 situation is the disturbing reality that Steve Kerr values him far higher than he should. If GP2 was going to come back and play 5 to 10 minutes of spot defense on your opponent's best player, in other words, what I'm trying to say is if GP2 was utilized properly and effectively, bring him back. Sign me up for that. But Steve Kerr gave this guy 16 minutes a game last year. Steve Kerr was starting him in postseason games. Steve Kerr, I think, gave him over 25 minutes, I think something like 30 games last year. GP2 should not be a pivotal piece of your rotation. Not if you're trying to actually win championships. So anyways, the idea of GP2 coming back, for me, is not a great idea for the simple reason, again, that Steve Kerr has not shown me that he's good with personnel decisions. He has his crutches. When the pressure gets tight, he relies on a very few people that he trusts the most. And sadly, GP2 has gone into that inner circle of Steve Kerr's trust. Players like Kuminga, Moses Moody, even Guy Santos, they have not. So in these pivotal moments, you're oftentimes seeing GP2 get minutes over these better athletes, better players. And if that wasn't happening, I'd be elated over any idea of GP2 coming back. Unfortunately, they have Steve Kerr as a head coach, which means that he oftentimes will play the wrong players because as good as he is when it comes to schematics and his court vision, he's awful at the GM side of things, man. He's awful when it comes to knowing who should play when. And that especially applies to GP2. In 2022, I was ripping Kerr for not playing GP2 enough. Do you all forget game 1 of the NBA Finals when Kerr unnecessarily DNP'd GP2? Even though his dad, even though himself was coming out saying, I'm ready to play. I'm back. The wrist is healed. I'm a quick healer. We saw this just this last year, by the way. I'm ready. But no, Steve Kerr in game 1 of the NBA Finals was like, we don't need GP2. And remember, he begrudgingly played him all season. Warriors lose game 1 of the NBA Finals unnecessarily at that. Oh, and then GP2 comes back in game 2 and suddenly the impact is felt and huge surprise. He makes a difference. That was 3 years ago. Times have changed tremendously. So I bring all that up because Sam Amick of The Athletic reported on this radio show that what he's hearing is that the Warriors are not interested in GP2. And if that's true, that's good news because it probably means what Slater reported, Seth Curry, night and day in terms of options for this Warriors team and being a positive effect on this Warriors team. Seth Curry, man, that is what the Warriors need. Not GP2. Anyway, so Sam Amick is reporting that GP2 is in fact not on the Warriors' radar. Yes, Theodore Irvin. Talk about simplifying what should not have been complicated to begin with. Nailed it. Essentially, Kuminga should get all of GP2's minutes. Ding, ding, ding. We have ourselves a winner. If only the Warriors had a head coach who can understand simple concepts like that. It really is that simple. And Portola 45 adding, I would take Knox over GP2. Kevin Knox, the second, who you're referring to, is also still a free agent out there. Side note, his representation is the same as Jonathan Kuminga's. Aaron Turner is representing like half of the Santa Cruz guys. Good luck with that. Terentia Nigel Carroll in the chat adding, I love GP2 as well, but he was just not used properly last year. Steve Kerr is not skilled in real time, slow to adjust, and can't see the need to make correct adjustments. My point exactly. Nick Fensky, my dear friend, good to see you. A prominent actor, by the way, you've probably seen him in one of your favorite shows at some point in your life, is asking, where's Bubs, my English Bulldog? That's a few weeks away. I gotta do a whole, I'm working on it. I gotta get steps for him. I gotta build a proper bed, a stage, some sort of table where I can put a bed on top of that, because he's an English Bulldog. My dog does nothing. Like, he's right now, he's sitting here on the ground. And I'd show you if wires weren't going to get pulled and stuff, but he literally just does nothing all day, every day. The only time I ever get upset at my dog is when he's so lazy that he goes, I'm just going to take a big piss right here where I'm laying. He does that sometimes. Mostly it's when he's annoyed at me because I didn't take him for a walk. Yeah, he'll do that. Not fun. But anyways, that will come soon. Thank you for the nice distraction there. And it leads to the final point that I want to bring up today, and then we'll conclude this very short and sweet show. That sadly, again, it's now August 8th, and we're still talking about Jonathan Kuminga.
Again?
Yeah. And the last thing, and then we're out. Happy Friday, by the way. God damn, this week was long. Chris Boucher, formerly of the Toronto Raptors, formerly of your Golden State Warriors, has signed with the Boston Celtics. Veteran minimum. God damn it. Like, I saw that news, and he was very high on my radar. Chris Boucher can play basketball. He gives you size. He gives you athleticism. He's actually a solid player offensively where he can score buckets in the post, has a great post game. He even shot 36% from three last year. Jesus. Anyways, Celtics signed him for the veteran minimum. And all that transaction did was piss me off, because the Warriors could have literally had Chris Boucher and had a legitimate center on the roster for the veteran minimum. And whether the Jonathan Kuminga situation prevented that, whether Chris Boucher is just not on the Warriors' radar because of Steve Kerr, whatever the reasoning was, that the Warriors just sat there and did nothing while another team signed a high-quality big, infuriated me, man. And look, Al Horford could work out. Who knows if he's going to come back? I mean, he still might retire, which is crazy. And AC's saying Chris Boucher can't play center. Are you remembering this is the Golden State Warriors we're talking about? I mean, keep that in mind, all right? Very important. Look, Al Horford, if it's best case scenario Al Horford, great. I'm going to forget all about Chris Boucher, no time. But in any decision in life, not just basketball, I mean, we're talking personal, business, you apply a risk assessment to these decisions, right? You weigh the pros and cons. And the con of Al Horford, the risk factor, is very obvious. 39 years old. If he can still hold up, great. We're happy. But why not have a backup plan to that? Why not have, in other words, what is your, do the Warriors not believe in backup plans? Do they not believe in contingency plans? Like, do they not believe in having a reinforcement if something called an injury happens, which is very common in the NBA and pretty damn common for 39-year-olds? What's the contingency plan if Al Horford goes down? I mean, what are we doing here, man? And this is the Golden State Warriors in 2025. Okay. And that's it. Short and sweet. You have to bring him to Quentin Post. Let's hope Quentin Post in year 2 has some more muscle in his body, because his biggest concern, and I should bring Frank Red on the show here for that. Because Frank Red, if you're not familiar with him, he's oftentimes on that Larry Krueger panel, former D1 player at Fordham, knows his hoops. And he provided a very simple yet incredibly awesome analysis on Quentin Post that has never left my mind. And what he said was, Quentin Post's shoulders are too narrow. That was his initial scouting report on Quentin Post. The very first thing he said about Quentin Post was, yeah, he's got narrow shoulders, and usually NBA centers have much broader shoulders. And then my follow-up question to that was, well, is that something that can be made up for with weightlifting and muscle mass? And he's like, yeah, maybe. The moment I heard that, skepticism grew. He could be wrong. I don't see the narrow. I kind of see it. I mean, when Quentin Post is defending bigger centers, you do see them looking wider, and you do see them backing him down pretty easily. So I do hope Quentin Post this offseason did add muscle mass and is better at holding his position defensively against elite bigs. If he can do that, great. But at the moment, he's a bit of a liability defensively. And rebounding-wise, he does need to get a little better in that department. Steve MC is writing, you need a backup plan. What's the plan if Steph has to miss time? And that's where I think DeAnthony Melton would be a huge addition for this team. This team has not learned a thing over the years. Yeah, and again, that's why DeAnthony Melton and Seth Curry, and then the obvious one, Jonathan Kuminga. That's your backup plan. But if you're just going to be like waiting for Jonathan Kuminga to accept a very one-sided deal, good luck with that. Just, what are we doing here, man? What are we doing? What's going on here? Do you folks get as frustrated as I do when you see people make in very powerful positions, making far more money than you, making decisions that in turn have you thinking, I could do that job a million times better than this person? That is the most frustrating aspect of sports, period, because it happens all too often. And it's one of the reasons why I respected this Warriors organization so much during this dynasty. I didn't think that about them until recently, until these last few years. And I'm guessing a lot of you feel the same way. Kerry Evans is adding that Josh Giddey's three-point percentage for the 2024-5 season was 37.8%. Look, he's not a bad three-point shooter, but maybe I'll do another show where I break down the analysis. I guess what I'm with Josh Giddey, and this is very subjective, so forgive me. I try to reinforce my opinions with some evidence here, and I don't have that in front of me right now. Do you trust him? If the game's on the line, or if you're in a crunch situation, what do they call it? A clutch situation. The final 5 minutes, you're within 5 points. Are you trusting Josh Giddey to take threes? Because I'm not going to sit here and say I trust Jonathan Kuminga to take threes, but Kuminga can do a whole lot of other things in the final 5 minutes to make a huge impact. And look, maybe Josh Giddey can do. If this ends up being the case and the Warriors flip these two, let's move on and live with Josh Giddey. I'm not going to sit here and rant and rave about that. Yeah, 290 out west is, I think you have nailed it the most astutely here. Just the problem is clearly the head coach, but unfortunately, the owner is buddies with him. They went through too much together. I don't know what's going on there, but yup. Congratulations. This is the kind of thing you do on a Friday. Yup ordered a WWF. Isn't it WWE? Wildlife Federation. Anyways, so you can feel like the Rock and Stone Cold. A recent consumer purchase just for the sake of, I feel like buying something that's kind of cool. I don't know if you've ever seen those ads for the air guns where you just put salt in there and you shoot bugs. Yeah, that thing's awesome. That was my frivolous purchase. All right, we're done. Have a great weekend. If anything happens between now and Monday in terms of transactions, in terms of news, obviously we're going live. Otherwise, I genuinely wish we were talking about actual basketball, but instead, still talking about Jonathan Kuminga.
Again?
So that's where we're at. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Sorry couldn't provide more in terms of content and information. This is where we're at. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye-bye again.